Hello everybody, welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today I'll be doing a review of the brand new film Sound of Freedom, the film starring Jim Caviezel, which has gotten a lot of attention, especially from even members of the media pointing out that this film is doing quite well for a film of this size and also of this subject matter. And now after having seen the film, I can definitely understand as to why not only is this film doing, pretty well for what it is, but also why it is an important film that I think a lot of people probably need to end up watching, and why it is so important for us to start talking about the subject matter of this movie in a much more clear way. And I'll try and be as clear as I possibly can throughout the rest of the review. Before any further ado, please make sure to smash the like button, like the fire button, Odyssey, smash the rumble button, and also make sure that you are subscribed to the channel as well. Let's go ahead and dive into it. Again, hopefully you can tell that, a little bit more of a somber tone today, because this is a very difficult movie to watch. The subject matter deals specifically with the abuse of children, especially when it comes to the global, the sad state of our world, where there is a global market for these traffickers of children in this capacity, in this way, this multiple hundreds of billions of dollar industry every single year. And I think it's so important that they have done this, that they have put this film out there, that they have put this story, again, based upon and inspired by a real person in Tim Ballard, played by Jim Caviezel, a former U.S. government agent who quits the job for the U.S. government in order to devote his entire life to rescuing children. And I think that in and of itself should already kind of give you a glimpse into why I think this film is even more important. The fact that a guy had to quit his job in order to actually go and save children, and actually for that to be something that he was able to accomplish, because the government was not willing to do the things that would be needed, because, they're not our children, because they are not American citizens, or because of this or because of that. That to me already kind of gives me a little bit of pause in general when talking about or thinking about this subject, because it makes me even more critical. I'm very, very much critical of our modern, socioeconomic and sociopolitical system that we live in today, with all the corruption that we have. But to me, this is something that everyone should be able to agree on. Children should be left alone. As it says right here, this is a big quote from the movie, God's children are not for sale. Should that not be something that we can all agree on? And so obviously you do feel that frustration throughout the course of the movie, because you are experiencing what Tim Ballard is going through, played very, very well by Jim Caviezel, and a very strong supporting cast. I will say that overall, I'll get kind of my gripes with the movie out of the way. I do think that this film suffers from what a lot of these lower budgeted movies suffer from. This comes from Angel Studios. This is a lot of the people I think behind the scenes were involved in things like The Chosen and some of these other faith-based movies. And oftentimes when it comes to, and this is not specifically a faith-based movie, but when it comes to the other films that the studio has been involved in, I don't know, there's just something about these movies that just doesn't feel quite right. It's possibly the fact that the pacing of this movie, it's a 2-hour and 15-minute movie, so for a smaller film like this, that definitely, I think, really needed someone a little bit more competent behind the camera, as far as the editor and as far as the director, being able to keep that pace going, because there are some really brilliant moments in this movie. There's some really great acting. Shout out to, by the way, especially more so than anyone else, even more so than Jim Caviezel, shout out to the kids in this movie. The kids and the kid actors in this movie and the portrayals that they gave, I think, are probably not only some of the best performances in the film, but also the most important ones, because it is what helps you understand what exactly actual real children are going through on a daily basis. Stuff that we know about, stuff that our government knows about. And in many cases, they probably even know where some of the bodies are buried, where they know where some of these, sickos are. And yet they choose to do nothing because of some sense of hiding behind the law, because of some sense of hiding behind the different excuses for why they're not going to act in a different way. And it is, again, so important that those performances were as good as they actually were in the movie, because that is going to be, if anything's going to change the mind and heart of anyone, if anything is going to be able to convince somebody that this is an issue. And, you would think that in and of itself, the issue would already be something that you could get behind. But I think that sometimes the medium that we experience things, right? The medium of experiencing news from a news story, right? We become so desensitized as a culture when we hear about something like this coming from the media, which we already have a very rocky relationship with. It doesn't nearly impact us nearly as much as a narrative storytelling, right? As narrative storytelling itself. And so that's why kudos to those actors, but also going back to that criticism of the pacing, it also, I think, kind of really shows and really, again, reminds me why it is so important for us to support movies like this. Because you might be thinking, wait a minute, you just said that there's a criticism. Why would that make you actually want to support this movie more? Well, why is it that when we get movies like this, and when we get movies telling these kinds of stories, some of the most important stories that we should ever be told in a movie, in order for us to know exactly what's going on, in order for us to actually be able to be motivated to go out and do something in the world around us, don't we want and should not we expect the best? And the fact that there's no major studio, again, this is a real person, Tim Ballard, the fact that no other studio apparently showed any interest in him or in any of these stories. I mean, the closest that we've ever gotten really to a mainstream movie, to my knowledge, and again, please correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but to my knowledge, the only one that even touches on trafficking as far as a general sense, as far as like mainstream appeal in the last, couple of decades, was the first Taken movie. And that deals with someone who's a little bit older, right? This deals with the fact that there are so many young kids, children, innocent children being impacted. And so, again, I use that as a criticism of the movie because objectively there are those pacing elements that are problematic, that I think aren't very good. Also, I don't know if it was the theater I was in or not, but the sound mixing. At times, there were certain sounds, certain dialogue that was a lot louder than other parts. The mixing didn't sound quite right. It very well could have been my local theater, because my local theaters had a lot of issues. Just every single time I go, it seems that there's certain issues going on. But I know that the last time I went to go see a movie where I thought those issues were there, it actually turned out that it was the movie. It was actually a bad version of the film that had been released, and they had to actually re-release a better version with better audio. I think it was for Spider-Verse, in fact, that they had to update the vision, or update the version that they had in theaters. So I look at that and I think to myself, again, it obviously makes me sad that that is one of the issues that this film has, because I think it might keep some people away from it, or it might keep people from being able to appreciate the film for what it actually is. But also, it actually even is much more of a motivator, because it also makes me even more frustrated, because this does not have to be how it is. Why is it that these smaller studios are the only ones that are going to pick up stories like this? It's also make you ask those questions about why did it take so long? Why did it take until 2023, when this has been an issue for decades and decades and decades, for a story like this to be brought forward? And what I really love about it, I'm not really spoiling anything because this is, again, based on a real event, but also like the after of the film itself, you know pretty quickly that there's going to be a message, which I really appreciate. When the credits roll, there is like a little timer at the bottom saying 2 minutes until a special message. Jim Caviezel comes on screen and he talks about the movie. And one of the things that he mentions is saying this movie was ready to be released, or they wanted to release this film 5 years ago. And because of things getting in their way, because essentially of everything that could happen, to block this film or to keep this film from coming out, did happen. The fact that that was anything that they had to deal with a movie like this and a story like this, says to me a lot about modern Hollywood and about the people involved in modern Hollywood, and why any of them would not want this to be out there, would not want this to be a story that is being told, to bring attention to this, because Lord knows that this is going to bring not only more people to the fight against this garbage, right, against the trafficking of innocent children across our world, not only just the trafficking of human beings in our world today. One of the things that they mention, right, they typically in these kinds of movies have little facts at the very end. There's more people in slavery today than there ever was when it was legal. That automatically should make us go, oh my gosh, this is so much bigger than I ever thought it was going to be. So on that point, the acting in this film is great. There are those pacing issues that exist throughout, and again, some of those audio issues too. But ultimately, this is a very compelling story. I think that this is a story that needs to be supported. I mentioned last year when the film What is a Woman came out. Now, I know some people may find that controversial to even mention that in the same breath as this movie, but that film, in many ways, is just as important for different reasons. Because who is going to be negatively impacted by the subject matter of What is a Woman are children. Millions, thousands of children, millions of children across the world are going to be impacted by the decisions being made because of that subject matter. In this matter, we already know, it is already a fact that there are millions of innocent children currently being impacted by this, by human traffickers. And over the course of the movie, I also was starting to think about, of course, the Epstein situation, and thinking about how apparently there was a book, like a little black book of names, and the fact that that book apparently has now received some type of seal or some type of protection, and immediately made me want to go further into it to find out more about it. Because if we, even for a moment, have the potential to find out not only who other traffickers are, but also who the people who are involved in this process are, and we are not going to take advantage of that, we are not going to try to find out more about that, we're doing something wrong. And that's what I think this movie is so important, because this movie is going to bring so much more attention to this subject matter in such a way, right? That sex trafficking, that human trafficking, and I know just saying those words alone, because YouTube does not want you to talk about it, makes you kind of wonder, why would YouTube want to demonetize the videos? Why would YouTube want to have any impact on videos that happen to talk about this subject matter? Makes you wonder, doesn't it? But this movie, I honestly think, is one of the most important films. Is it the best movie as far as the objective quality of the film? No. It has those issues, has those pacing issues. There are some performances in the film that are not all that great. There are some sound issues, and again, I don't know whether that was the theater or whether that was the movie itself, but what they are able to do with this, and the fact that this is a film that could have and should have been made by a much bigger studio, that could have been able to probably get through and not have the same issues as that, should make anyone motivated and should make anyone ticked off at the politicians in our country, at the people in the media, at the people in Hollywood, because so much could be done and not enough is being done. Again, God's children are not for sale. That is why this film is so important to watch, and that's why I think everyone should watch this movie. And in fact, you know what? Since I know that YouTube is going to probably demonetize it anyway, because I'm talking about sex trafficking of innocent children, I'm going to just demonetize this video altogether. Because again, screw YouTube in any regard. I don't care about that. What I care about is I care about people finding out about this movie, finding out about its subject matter, finding out the fact that there are millions upon millions of children right now currently being trafficked across the world, including in the United States. The United States being one of the top places, by the way, where children are being trafficked. And we need to talk about it. We need to stop hiding behind rules and laws and, oh, that's not proper to talk about. No, we need to talk about this. It's so incredibly important. I recommend everyone go to see this film. If I had to give this film a grade, objectively speaking, I'm going to give this film a B. I'm kind of leaving in the B minus because I don't think that the film itself, objectively speaking, is the best made movie in the world. That all being said, subjectively, this film is so important, and this film absolutely pulls and tugs at your heartstrings because it makes you recognize and realize there are so many innocent people right now, especially children, who are being impacted in this way. And we need the story of Tim Ballard, and we need more stories of other people who have done similar things to get out there for everyone to see. One of the really cool things that they did at the end of the movie, when I mentioned how Jim Caviezel comes in at the end to give a special message, is that there's this whole pay it forward campaign, and he invites people to scan their phones, right, to scan a QR code and to pay for someone else's ticket, saying, we don't want you to give us money directly. We want you rather to try to help as many people as possible, including people that can't afford to see this movie, the chance to actually come and watch it. And I thought that was a very powerful statement. Again, he's like, it's not about me. It's not about this movie necessarily, like, as you know, as far as like some ego thing. It's about, we need this message. Break the silence, save the children, as it says. And I think that's so very important. And I would even go further than that to say, you know, if you think that your money would be better served supporting organizations that help support kids, then I would say absolutely, that's where your money should go instead. But I think that just having this conversation is something that this film has already done without even seeing it, without anyone else, you know, maybe you haven't seen it or you don't want to see it or whatever it might be. Just the fact that we can talk about it, I think, is incredibly important. But let me know your thoughts about this in the comment section down below. Have you seen the film? Did you think the film was good? You know, just your general thoughts on that. And what are some ways that you think maybe you have your own ways and means of being able to help support these kids, and ways in which we can get involved in the fight? Hey, I want to learn more about this. Again, this is the type of thing where, you know, the movie, one of the purposes of it is to motivate people. And I'm definitely feeling motivated right now. And so I want everyone, if you have ideas about where we can support, who's a good organization for us to support in order to try to help these kids, what can we do, practically speaking, to try and make sure that we get to a point where there are, you know, ideally, of course, no children being impacted by this, but at the very least, where can we start, right? Because even if we can only start with 10, 20, 30 kids, at least it's something, and at least those are 10, 20, 30 souls that we can try to bring some solace to, some comfort to, some peace to, and find out more and do more in our life. So thank you all very much for watching this video. And again, share it as well. And again, most importantly, share the message of this movie. Whether it's seeing this movie or watching this movie, that's one way, of course, to do it. Even more so, talking about this with your family, talking about this with your friends, and saying, let's actually do something. Let's finally get up off our butts and do something about this. Anyway, you guys are all amazing. Seriously, thank you very much for allowing me to speak on this, because you know, this, again, I think that this is such an important topic. So you guys are all wonderful and amazing people. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge special shout out to all of my June Patreon Subscribe Star and Locals members at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above. Starting off first with Patreon, Father Luca Illich, Hymir Irie Hymason, Garrett Searles, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Orange Hat Reviews, you can check it over at his YouTube channel, Orange Hat Reviews, Laura, the Modern Major General Story, Rosetta Allen, who you can check out at her YouTube channel of Eagle Rider, and Miss Martin Muses, who you can check out at her YouTube channel by the same name as well. Also to my Subscribe Star peeps, Matt317, check out his Twitch channel by the same name, Fast Reaction, The R, Mr. Roy, J-Rod the Beer Guru, and ZK Man, who you can check out over at xtheboundaries.co. And lastly, to my Locals members, Miss Minnesota Hockey Fan, How About a Hockey Player, J.H. Schwalbach, and Robert Barnes, the amazing lawyer. And again, thank you all very much for being my supporters. If you want your name shout out at the end of every live stream and every video, check out the top link in the video description below. You also can get access to things like a giveaways channel where I give away Blu-rays, 4K steelbooks, all kinds of stuff every single, most weeks in the month. I try to give away something, or at the very least towards the end of the month, I will make it up with several giveaways. Basically, most people are guaranteed to walk away with something at the end of every single month. So if you want access to that, again, check out the top link in the video description below, as well as access to an exclusive podcast. This past month, I was actually able to record a great podcast with Michelle from Force of Light Entertainment. So you want access to that and also a plethora of other content, check out the link in the video description below. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.